Kyle Mills, welcome to Suit Up the Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I am absolutely delighted to talk about Fade In. I was really curious about this book because, I've been doing this show long enough. I'm in that periphery of as the whispers and the rumbles across the internet start on Kyle Mills has a new book coming out. And my goodness, is this an intriguing cover? So, just right off the bat, Fade In, how did this start?
Oh, man, it started 20 years ago, I suppose. I created that character and wrote a book called Fade 20 years ago about Salam Al-Fayed, who's a former Navy SEAL and a CIA operative. His family were first generation Syrian immigrants. Um, and he had been kind of screwed over by the government. He'd had a bullet in his spine from an operation that was slowly paralyzing him. And then they tried to force him back into the government to kind of use up what was left of him. And he went on a rampage against the people trying to do this at Homeland Security with the idea that it would be his last rampage and would end in a fiery explosion and his death, which it did kind of. And I never thought I'd bring him back. To me, he was dead. And then I just kept thinking about him, and fans kept sending me emails about him. And one day I figured out a way he could have survived. But then I just put it in the back of my head because I was in the middle of doing the Mitch Rapp stuff and
Mhm.
I didn't know what story I had for him to tell.
I think that that was one of the things that I was most curious about walking into the book is I hadn't read the first one, and I'm always curious when you bring back a character because it's almost like that Top Gun versus Top Gun Maverick. How much you have to know the previous thing to enjoy the current thing. And I give you huge props in that you walk us immediately through setup in you know everything you know need to know about Fade within the first 4 or 5 pages. There's a short prologue that sets up and then the world as he comes back into it, you learn just little bits more and more about him, but it's never anything aggressive. I thought as a writing technique, you did a phenomenal job loading the information slowly without it being like, here is his dossier backstory in 20 pages that it feels like you're reading a report in an office.
Yeah, that's always been a pet peeve of mine. Right? The character walks up to the sink, looks in the mirror, and then thinks about everything they've done since high school. You know, I like characters to unfold, but it was also I mean, it was a challenge to
Hmm.
give you enough backstory so you know who he is and where he came from, but also to not make it feel like, oh, there's a book out there somewhere that I needed to read first.
Hmm.
To me, this is the first book in a series.
Hmm.
And Fade, the book Fade, is now would read like a prequel.
Yeah.
So if you went back and read it, it's a little like Vince Flynn's American Assassin. Read
Yes.
the whole series. If you went back and read it, you'd be like, oh, cool, this is where he came from. But it's not necessary. But you had to kind of,
Hmm.
yeah, you had to create. I had to write flashbacks. I wrote my first two flashbacks of my entire career because
Oh, wow.
yeah, they're short, but I was like, how else can I do this? And so I had to go figure that out. I think I actually asked Mark Graney about it because he'd written a book with a bunch of flashbacks in it, how he pulled it off.
I think that one of my favorite tropes in fiction, to a certain extent, is Count Monte Cristo, my favorite book ever. And I've always felt like you could tell that story where it's just from the moment he comes back rather than all of the backstory of how he got there. But obviously, like
Right.
it's a great book the way it is. But you don't need to have that backstory to have a great adventure. And I think that you did a great job here where it's that moment where the hero is resurrected. He literally is basically coming back from the dead and off on adventure. And I think you do a great job of just giving enough information, but then there's a setup. One of the specific questions I had as I started reading this book was, what was it like? Basically, you've got a character you created in 2004, basically 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
20 years
And
ago, yeah.
now he's back alive today in 2025, 2024. What was it like for you writing that character? Because just the amount of time that has passed in the world looks so different from then to now. Like as you're experiencing what the character is going through, did you have any holy crap, how has the world shifted so much or changed so much?
The world has changed, yeah, so much. I mean, so the question was one of the questions I've left very ambiguous was how long was he in a coma? Because
Yeah.
clearly I didn't want it to be 20 years. So time isn't moving realistically. So even when I wrote those flashbacks, I had to change something. So for instance, when the book was originally written, he has this fight with this SWAT team
Hmm.
and he has all these electronics that he bought, but he had bought them from the Sharper Image in the first books. There was no Amazon or anything like that. And so I had to make these subtle changes. And then if you look at cultural references, they're all over the place, like back to the Go-Go's. He listens to
Uh-huh.
the Go-Go's and things moving forward so that his background is kind of ambiguous to where he existed in
Hmm.
that first section. And I thought that was actually really fun to do. But you do need to have a sense of who he is because he's a complicated character. His
Yes.
motivations are complicated. It's definitely not as easy as doing he works for the government. He loves America. He's defending America against a terrorist. Everybody's understands those motivations.
Hmm.
Sometimes his motivation is just like, I don't have anything better to do.
Well, that's probably one of my favorite scenes in the book is there's a point where he sees a light in the distance and he's like, I have nothing else to do. I'm curious. And then his buddy
Yeah.
shows up and looks for him and he's like, I see the light in the distance. Knowing Fade, he probably just wandered that direction because he was like, what's going on? That was refreshing as a thriller character. Often we get exactly what you described. They bleed red, white, and blue, and they are going to solve this terrorist plot, which is a satisfying thriller plot and hero. But Fade is very intriguing and different. I can you talk a little bit about what went into creating Fade from the start and then bringing him back?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the first book was very much about a doomed character, like
Hmm.
it completely turned around the idea that Fade did not intend to survive to the end of the book. And so I mean, in a way, you get a guy like Mitch Rapp is courageous,
Hmm.
but I don't, Fade's almost more like suicidal. So he doesn't care that much. And
Hmm.
so it plays the same. I mean, he's willing to run into the fire, but it's just more because, like I said, he doesn't have anything better to do and doesn't really care if he survives the episode because there wasn't anything in his life. In the beginning, he had really no friends. He had been screwed over by the government. He was slowly going paralyzed, and all these things. And so he was just a character who's just nihilistic and kind of depressed and all these things. So all those things are critical to how he sees his life and how he wants to move forward. And that's where you bring in John Lowe,
Hmm.
the billionaire who recruits him,
A man
whose
of
gift
vision.
is was that
A man of vision.
a man of vision for sure, like strange vision, but certainly vision. And his gift is knowing what people need and giving it
Hmm.
to them. And mostly, a lot of times it's money or it's women or it's power, it's all these things. And for Fade, he's like, I'm going to give you a reason to get up in the morning.
Hmm.
I'm going to give you a shot at having a life. And he's right. That's what Fade needs.
Hmm. Mentioned John Lowe. John Lowe was one of the more intriguing characters in the book as you introduce all these characters because we see types like this that pop up in the zeitgeist here and there, and you never quite know what the elite upper echelon wants to do or doesn't want to do. It leans almost conspiracy theory, but it's fascinating because I've been doing a lot of research in the 1930s for some stuff I'm working on. And the Gilded Age to the 1930s, there was definitely an emphasis on the government says, I'm not going to do this. We're leaving it to the hands of the private individual to take care of. And you, the JP Morgans of the world, the Rockefellers, have to sort these things out amongst yourselves. And I almost feel like John Lowe is a flashback of that era in some ways.
Yeah, JP Morgan was very much on my mind, the guy that bailed out the United States financially. Um, and we're seeing that. again. I mean, maybe even more so now. You think about someone like Elon Musk, and I wrote this book before Elon Musk decided to get into politics, but the idea that we can't really shoot things into space without him, we can't communicate without his satellites. Now, he got free hand to do whatever he wanted with the US government. These guys are super powerful. Then you've got the media people who control what we see. I
Hmm.
mean, they're propagandists, really, but on a level that's never been seen before. They know that we're staring at their content 8 hours a day. They use algorithms to target us, to addict us to it, to tell us what we want to hear. And that's going to become more and more powerful as they no longer have to use like types.
Hmm.
Marketing has typically been based on groups, right? You look at me and you're like, well, he's a middle-aged white guy from Wyoming. Here's what we should be marketing to him and how we should market it. But now they'll be able to do it to me
Hmm.
based on their knowledge of everything I've ever bought, every place I've ever been, every all my friends, my thoughts, my politics, my religion, because they know all that.
Hmm.
So, and AI will be able to target every single person in America, all 350 million of us, with an individual. They're like, oh, Bob likes advertisements with cats on it. So he's always going to get cats, but this guy likes whatever dog. So I think that the power of these people is becoming unprecedented.
Hmm.
And combine them with a few very powerful leaders. You combine the wealthiest people in the world with, you know, Trump, Putin, and Z, who are the most powerful leaders in the world, and they all get together, there's really not much they can't do. So this is a group that's decided that's becoming very destructive, and that maybe instead of, trying to make their 251st billion dollars by bringing down society, they should put the brakes on it and decide, because the governments can't anymore. They've become very incompetent, very much focused on power. That it's they in their best interest to keep society from, imploding, because, in an imploded society, having billions of dollars probably not that helpful.
Hmm. You made a comment in a 2021 interview with The Big Thrill that I thought was really interesting in light of reading Fade In, which was one of the difficulties of being a thriller writer today is more and more one person's hero is another person's villain. And that if you were writing your own book, this is something you'd probably tackle directly. At the time, you were referring to one of the Vince Flynn Mitch Rapp books that you were writing. I'm curious,
Mhm.
is this a theme we're going to see extrapolated more as the Fade series expands?
Yeah, it's funny that I even got hired to do the Mitch Rapp stuff, because my books have always explored the gray between the black and the white, which
Hmm.
is what I think is interesting, and also I think really realistic. Nobody's
Hmm.
purely good or purely evil. So the Mitch Rapp stuff was very much Vince's style was very much good. There was a good guy, a bad guy. They're modern westerns, right?
Hmm.
Super fun to read. I was always a huge fan, and they were really fun to write. But this is different in that John Lowe, I love the comment when people will tell me, I thought John Lowe was the villain in the beginning, but by the end I wasn't sure.
Yes.
And I said, yeah, because John Lowe isn't sure. I'm not
Hmm.
sure. Like, where's that guy going? He seems like he's not wound super tight, but he kind of wants to do the right thing. And this is one of the things that makes Fade so important in his organization. Is Fade is he's crazy for sure, but he's a fundamentally good person.
Hmm.
He wants to do the right thing. He's just not sure what it is. And that moral compass is something that John Lowe clings to, like a lot more than you'd think a guy like that would. That he sees Fade as sort of his, like the angel on his shoulder, and Fade doesn't really want to play that role.
Well, I think that's part of what makes their dynamic. Every scene that Fade and John Lowe share just is electricity on the page because they do have like the literary character chemistry where Fade is kind of a reluctant hero to a certain extent. He does it because yeah, I it's the right thing to do, and I guess I don't have anything better to do. And John Lowe is like, I will give you virtually every resource possible. I'm giving you this reason, this thing to do. So it makes for very compelling reading.
Yeah, and it's weird because he's sitting there asking Fade his opinion, and Fade's always thinking, I never even went to college. Like, I'm not the guy to rule the world here. I don't want you to take my opinion. Like, if you need my opinion, we're in really deep shit.
I
So
think
I think he underestimates himself.
yes, and that's part of what makes Fate a really fun character is he genuinely has there's that thing where truly intelligent it's isn't it like there's a specific term for basically your conscious incompetence. You are aware of what you're not aware of, and that usually speaks more of the depth of your awareness rather than your ignorance. And I feel like Fade is that character where he accepts these are what my limitations are, and this is what I know and I don't know, what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And that just makes him more grounded and realistic, where, yeah, I'm more likely to trust what he says or what he thinks. He also has just a wry, cynical philosophy as he approaches every one of these situations that makes for fun reading. And I'm assuming very fun writing.
Yeah, I love his dark sense of humor. And I've met a lot of operators like him who that's how they get through their day, right? Because it's not, if you're in Afghanistan and you're a SEAL or whatever, you're probably not having a great day, but you can get through it with a little dark humor. And Fade's also a very much a pop philosopher. He
Hmm.
likes thinking about the world and what's happening in it and putting his weird spin on it and his giving you his perspective. And that's one of the things I love about books that maybe has somewhat been lost is
Hmm.
that they have an ability to make you think about perspectives and characters that you wouldn't otherwise.
Hmm.
Movies are great, but you can only get so deep into a character, and particularly
Yeah.
a very ambiguous character.
Hmm.
So here you can see things as a reader and hopefully read them and think, I never thought about that situation this way. And maybe
Hmm.
there's some merit to that.
Well, and to that point, you made a comment about how the algorithm essentially creates our own echo chambers, and then it will continue to serve that up to us again and again and again. I think that's one of the things I love about books as just a physical medium. I can randomly in a bookstore or at a thrift store, any place where books are sitting on a shelf, see a title that interests me and it could be completely outside of my norm. If I can see that book, I can pick it up, I can give it a read, and suddenly have a different perspective on something that I might not have had otherwise, which the internet it can do, but doesn't always do.
You have to fight for it on the internet. Because I mean, I do every day because these ideas for books come from everywhere, right? I mean, I was really disappointed for instance, RT, like Russian. I don't even know. I think it was actually in Russian, but that was their channel, and it was kind of a Russian propaganda news site. But I loved it
Uh-huh.
because it was very much the Russians' perspective on the world,
Yeah.
and whether it's right or wrong, it's what they believe. So my news feed is all over the place. Everything from the far right to the far left to foreign to whatever to get all these different perspectives to come up with ideas for books or interesting characters and things. But if you don't fight for that,
Hmm.
your world will shrink down on you like was never possible before. Right? I mean, it's really incredible not just how much spin people get, but also what's left out. You
Hmm.
know, if you if you're, with say Donald Trump, who's a very controversial figure, if he does something really awful, like Fox News just won't report on it. And if you get
Yes.
your all your information from Fox, then you'll have no idea he did that, right? On the other hand, if you get it all from MSNBC and he does something good, they just won't report on that. You'll have no idea it
Hmm.
happens. Happens to me all the time when I'm in a conversation. If you're like, what are you talking about? You're like, well, it just happened. But their news feed, it's not part of what people want to hear who watch that news feed. So, but because I get it from everywhere,
Hmm.
and a lot of foreign sources. Al Jazeera is a great source. If you're writing about terrorism, you should definitely be into Al Jazeera because that's what's happening and that's how
Hmm.
they feel about it, right?
I actually had a question kind of related a bit to this. A lot of your thrillers have tended towards being either just on the precipice of what is happening Or so much so, I listened to another interview you did where you wrote a book that had Al Qaeda as the big bad before we had the Twin Towers, and you turned in your book just before 9/11, and they went, "Oh, so we need to edit this a bit now."
Yeah, that almost got thrown in the garbage. I was
Oh,
like, my editor said this is going in the garbage. And I'm like, I can fix it. But yeah, that was a weird one because Al Qaeda wasn't really a thing. In fact, I had to call the CIA to try to figure out if that was what the organization was even called, and they weren't sure
what a
because it
different
just meant
era.
the base or something. Yeah. So I was trying to get out, so that's what makes to me thrillers really interesting is
Hmm.
they're what could happen next month.
Yes.
That what's what makes them feel urgent and terrifying. The problem is, you start them like a year and a half before pub. So Fade, for instance, Fade In was when I started that, AI wasn't really a thing. That was just a year and
Oh.
a half ago. And it
Oh,
used to be the
wow.
world was still, you think about it, they were talking about it. There was
Yeah.
some rudimentary stuff out there. Now at pub, something that didn't exist at the beginning is taking over the world. So you're always having to think, where's that going to go? And where's that
Hmm.
going to be 18 months from now?
Hmm.
And then the paperback, then you're really hosed. Because that's like another year, and then God only knows what's going to be going on in the world. But if you think about what it would have been like to write, I don't know, Moby Dick, a great nautical thriller, he didn't have to worry about anything like that. I mean, the world was going to be exactly the same as it was when he was born, right? Maybe they had a better sails and a slightly different hull or something like that. But now everything you thought could be just out the window.
Hmm. Well, okay, on that point, I had a question. This is one of those oddball things I just heard from the internet at some point. I heard, please confirm to me whether this is true or false, that the government at one point had a thing where they talked to thriller writers about what are the potential threats on the horizon. And if you can tell us if that's a real thing, were you ever involved in it?
That was a real thing, and I did not get involved in that. And I felt this is sort of me coming through in Fade, where I thought, oh my God, if they're asking me, we're really in deep shit. Brad Thor did it, I
Okay,
think, and because this was a long time ago, and I'd
yeah.
swear Brad Meltzer was in it too, but I can't remember.
It's one of those things that popped up as I was reading the interviews there where you mentioned this thing about 9/11. I'm like, wait, this was actually like a zeitgeist moment where people were like, let's ask the thriller writers, what do they think will be the next thing to happen to America?
And honestly, I was probably a little hasty. If you read a lot of these guys' books, they are pretty good at predicting what's around the corner. So, maybe it was a better idea than I thought.
So, getting back to the production of Fade In, you published with Authors Equity, which I was so excited when I saw that because I'm a James Clear fan. And I had seen when he got involved in it back, I don't know, a year, 2 years ago, and they
Yeah,
announced it.
probably.
I was just curious, like, what was it like working with Authors Equity? And it, because I heard that it's different than necessarily the big five traditional publishers. It's trying to be a bit more innovative, more involved ownership level. What has your experience been? What do you think about it? Just tell me what the process was like.
Yeah, it's been great, actually. And I did it, they were very impressive to talk to. And I really loved the idea of being in on the ground floor of something like this and having a
Hmm.
really nimble company that,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's great working with the big publishers, but they have they're on their track and that's kind
Hmm.
of the dream. You can't deviate. They weren't
They
going to
have
deviate.
long entrenched systems and
Yeah.
bureaucracy, and this is the way we've always done things. Why would we do things different?
Right. And so this has been really interesting because you can literally call and say, I have this idea. And if it has merit, they're like, geez, we'll implement that tomorrow. And you think, or we'll figure out a system to put into place to implement that or something. And so it's a really different way of doing it. It is much more hands-on though. Like, and that's particularly for me because having done the Mitch Rapp stuff for so long, I
Hmm.
wasn't really that involved
Hmm.
in the marketing side. I mean, I could have been probably, but it just didn't seem like my place. So it's kind of gone from not much to, I mean, this is the first time I ever chose my own audio reader.
Oh, that is so
For
cool.
instance, and they're just like, here's your audio reader. Oh, great. But we did auditions and I got to listen to them all. Got to do an interview with the guy that ended up doing it. Covers, all
Hmm.
the things that I've never been that involved in. So it's been a lot of fun. I've actually learned a lot about the publishing industry that I didn't really know.
You were the first fiction author that I've seen come through there. And they may have others, but that was where I was like, oh, I thought this was just like James Clear nonfiction, that genre that they were going for. And I'm thrilled to see that it's going in the thriller direction too, because Faden's a great book. Like the design on this cover is instantly eye-catching. On the note on the audiobook, this is just one of those things that again surprised me when I realized the difference between 2004 now. I tried finding the Fade audiobook, and I know that you've heard this from other people too. I could not find the unabridged version of the audiobook.
Wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, people don't really realize that, but back in the day, you got abridged audiobooks, which is maybe a third of your book. So it was a script written based on your book, because it was all CDs. Well, first it was tapes, and the company that did the unabridged was a company called Books on Tape, but they were really expensive back in the day, more than $50. So they were mostly something you got from the library. And then that company, I think, got bought by Amazon, and all those tapes were lost.
A-
So it was there at some point, but I don't even have a copy of it. I don't think. But I mean,
Again,
I should look in my attic, but it'd be on literally on cassettes that I'm sure melted from being in my attic.
it's like the all those silent movies that were lost to Hollywood because they were on OG films sitting in warehouses and just lit
Yep.
on fire, gone for all time in
Yeah,
posterity.
yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, it would be really fun to redo that as an audiobook, but I don't know. Those abridged audiobooks though were horrible. That's why I think audio was really taken
Hmm.
off now. One, because you don't have the huge physical
Yes.
thing that you got to carry
Hmm.
around, but also because they're unabridged. And
Hmm.
trying to get you'd always get complaints. People would send you, this is the worst book I ever heard, or whatever. Right? It doesn't even make sense. You're like, it's a third of the book. I mean, of course it doesn't make sense.
Well, and not only that, just the accessibility. As much as Amazon is the Dr. Evil corporation, there is like the ability of being able to just download an audiobook on your phone. I have
Yeah.
like 80 audiobooks that once that I can just randomly pick through. And it's one of the things that I love about reading is that I can have the multiple formats.
Yeah. And you can do the whole thing where you read it on your on your device, and then when you pick up the audio again, it picks it up right where you left off on your device and stuff. Amazon might be evil, but boy, they are convenient.
Isn't that like the way that all like oligarchies work? But that's a
That's
different
exactly
conversation for.
right. Exactly right. I mean, it is very much about what this series it's what this series is about. You think
Hmm.
about Um, it's pretty trivial what we'll give up for convenience. I mean, even, go sign up for TSA Pre or Clear, and then you're giving all your data just so you can skip the line.
Hmm. I will say, I love my life was transformed the day I got TSA pre-check. But when I saw the clear thing, I'm like, you want me to stick my eyeballs in that? For whatever reason, I've seen too many sci-fi movies where I'll give you my fingerprints. The moment I give you my retinal scan, you're gonna have a clone of me in like another 20 years that's going to
Yeah.
kill me, take over my life, and then we're in total recall.
And that's not even the government, that's private company. So they're also going to sell it and lose it.
I mean, in fairness, I can see a lot of people wanting this. Like, there is a market for more of my DNA. I'm just assuming.
Yeah, I'm sure.
With the elite group in Fade In, it has a flavor of John Lowe is almost like a I'm a big fan of the James Bond series. So it's hard not to go, this is like a Bond villain as the start, and but with tweaks that make him fascinating, compelling. It's like a good benevolent Lex Luthor. If Lex Luthor is a good guy. is what vibes I got.
The world has moved to a point where, I mean, you got, Spectre and Blofeld and stuff like that were really fun, but not, it was hard to see how Spectre was really going to take over the world, right? But now you can kind of see it. Like, I mean, these guys are getting incredibly powerful. And so, I mean, you're going to go one way or the other with that. You're going to go full evil, which is what happens most of the time and probably what will happen in the real world. Or you could have a John Lowe type figure that says, let's see if we can use this to for a little bit of benevolence. Not, I mean, he's not naive. He's no goody goody. For sure, he
Hmm.
hired Fade, and you don't hire Fade. He doesn't have a skill set that goody goodies, kind of need. But I think with a lot of these billionaires now, there's a competition between them, and certainly the competition between the countries
Hmm.
that it's like the old Jurassic Park line. It was something like, you were so busy figuring out if you could, you didn't look at if you should.
Hmm.
And somebody just came out with a study recently or on AI and how it's going to destroy human society in about 10 years.
Oh,
And one of the fundamental things is they push it too far too fast
yes.
because we're competing with the Chinese. So the US government's like, well, maybe this is bad, but
Is this
wouldn't
the
it be
plot of
worse if,
Terminator?
yeah, it is. But it's not quite like they're going to be robots
Yeah.
killing us. It's just the impact on society is going to be so fast and
Hmm.
so devastating
Hmm.
with employment and all these things, with
Hmm.
the amount of power that it takes and all these things that I mean they're about to put a data center in my state that's going to use more power than all the homes in the state combined. And so
Wow.
eventually we will serve them, right? The what is the purpose of humanity? I have no idea, but pretty soon it's going to be providing power to AI servers. So it's a really fascinating time to be alive, I think, because the pace of change is so rapid.
Hmm. It's exciting times. What isn't that the Chinese proverb? Like, may you live in interesting times.
Yeah, the insult. Yeah.
One of my favorite questions to ask authors is, do you have a writing process? And if so, what does it look like? I mean, writing routine.
I'm really low tech with that. I have a laptop. I can work from anywhere. A lot of times it's like sitting on my bed, kind of where my wife isn't. And um, yeah, I'm kind of a 9 to 5er. I got into that. And so unless, the snow's flying and the skiing's really good or something, I just sort of work 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And I have a really tight schedule. So I have week to week how many chapters I have to do. So I don't ever, miss a deadline. But yeah, I don't feel like I have a big routine. I also live all over the world.
Hmm.
So you don't want to be one of those people that has to sit at a certain desk facing north between these
Hmm.
hours and stuff like that.
You don't take out your little thermometer to check the geometric, barometric pressure before you start writing.
No, I think largely that's a myth. That's like a lot of my author friends, it's pretty much like I write at 2 a.m. when my kids are asleep. You know, so it tends to be external forces
Hmm.
dictate your routine unless you're one of those cabin in the woods kind of guys.
You had made a comment in a past interview that your process is to get the easy things right. What are the easy things for you?
Yeah, like I mean, I think research is a big one that people ignore, not only because you don't want to get those things wrong, but because a lot of times they'll write your book for you.
Hmm.
You might come up with a great idea and then find out, oh no, reality is way cooler than that. And that's true a lot of times. You think about, yeah, I mean, just all kinds of things with technology and bioweapons and all these things. You come up with some really sinister thing, and then we start researching it. You find out, no, it's so much worse than that.
Hmm.
And we're really in that phase in humanity right now where things keep coming up, and you can't really think of all the evil that could be done with it.
Hmm.
But if humans are good at anything, It's figuring out how to turn a comfy chair into a weapon of mass destruction. It's the first thing that comes to our mind. Porn, how are we going to use it for porn and killing people? I mean, I'm sure it's been throughout history. Somebody got a sharp rock and was like, huh, porn and killing people.
That's genuinely amazing. And okay, so that was one of the things that I think you did a great job of using in the book is there are several references to COVID-19 and coronavirus. And that I thought was a not a bold choice, but a interesting choice because there are writers that either lean very far into that or have avoided it completely. And I think you managed to straddle the line where you use it as a good plot point, but it's not something that overpowers the plot and could be distracting for any audience member reading it.
Yeah, I really worked on that tightrope because I think it was a really interesting, COVID certainly was a very interesting time,
Hmm.
one that people don't necessarily want to revisit, but there are so many interesting conspiracy theories going on around it. And, it's what's happening. It really is. And this is certainly one of the biggest threats to humanity is pandemic.
Hmm.
So, I mean, we are too interconnected now. We're encroaching on a lot of territory that we have not been in, where there's going to be some beetle that no one's ever come into contact with that has some horrifying disease or whatever. So, these are the things that I really wanted to write about. After 9 years, 10 years of writing about terrorism,
Hmm.
there's the threat profile to humanity now is really different. It's
Hmm.
our self-destructive nature. It's potentially the climate. It's pandemic. It's individuals becoming very, very powerful because they have technology that they've never had at their fingertips before.
Hmm.
It's not that hard to create a bioweapon. You can get the stuff off Amazon. If you got probably an undergrad biology degree, you can figure this out. Same thing with nerve gas. Pretty soon you'll just be able to ask AI, how do I
Hmm.
make nerve gas? And it'll give you a recipe. So that's always something I've been interested in my writing is the power of the individual getting greater and greater. It's not,
Hmm.
1,000 years ago, somebody could get a sharp stick and run into a crowd. There's probably not going to be much more you could do than that and inflict some damage. But now it could be an individual who's a kook and is very, very smart. You think about the Unabomber,
Hmm.
um, could do incredible damage.
Well, and that's one of
And
the things
how do you know?
I'm excited to see as the Fade series continues how you explore some of these themes. Because you've said in a couple of other interviews, one of the things that attracted you to writing some of the Ludlum books was that you like science. And again, just because I've done the little bit of a dive through your previous interviews, it's been exciting and fun to see topics that you've touched on or gone, yeah, maybe that would be something fun to do, but maybe it's not best for this series, for the Mitch Rapp stuff, that I see that you explore in Fade In and the laying the groundwork for more exploration in these themes.
Yeah, and this is really why I left the Mitch Rapp thing. I kind of started on this path in the last couple of Mitch Rapp books, but it didn't feel right for the series. You've got to have a character that the story can be told through.
Yes.
And one of the things I like about Fate is that he can get dragged into things that are over his head. And
Hmm.
he feels it, just like we all do every day, where you wake up and you look at the news and you think, oh God, oh God, oh God. And he feels that same way. Whereas somebody like Mitch Rapp and Irene Kennedy are very much the masters of their universe.
Hmm. Well, and that's one of the things that I think also set up well with the resurrection of Fade is that he's someone who, be prior to his coma, is like special operations, awesome, he can kill everyone. He has to actually rebuild. And so you are going to start with him as an underdog in that he's having to go through physical therapy. He has some help to get there, but he isn't just immediately as devastating as he once was. And so we get to see him have to face his own mortality literally and his physical limitations, which I thought was really intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who is always the fastest, the strongest, and everything, and now he has to fight to get that back. He's also re-entering a world that he's not familiar with. And the analogy here was a lot of our veterans that come
Hmm.
back to normal society. Maybe they're injured like he is, maybe they're not. Maybe it's just dealing with day-to-day society that is really, really different than what they've experienced maybe over the last decade. And so, Fade wakes up to a world that's changed
Hmm.
significantly because it changes so quickly. And I think there's a moment where somebody walks in and asks him about it, and he says, nobody knows if they're a boy or a girl anymore, and somebody named Taylor Swift rules the world. And like that's what he's seen on the internet and on TV at that point after he's been awake for a few days. That's his takeaway. Um, and so it's a I wanted to create that again for people who can empathize
Hmm.
with Fade more than you would with a Mitch Rapp character. Mitch Rapp is a guy you want to be, maybe,
Hmm.
but Fade is a person I don't think you'd want to be him, but you can see, but you sympathize with him and you really like him, and you kind of feel bad for his situation and are rooting for him to get out of it.
Reading this book coincided with my 30th birthday. And
Yeah.
so it was an interesting parallel in when I went, oh, wow, the world has changed a lot since just like, let's say, last 30 years or 20 years. Going, oh, it's just it, taking measure of life and how far things have come in that way was fascinating. And it added to my experience. And again, you wrote a very compelling character and a great book. I'm going to, again, shout out everyone needs to pick up a copy of Fade In by Kyle Mills. I'm looking forward to the next one. I assume there's another one in the works.
Yep, I just finished the first draft of the next installment.
Congratulations. That is
Thank
an
you.
awesome achievement. I'm curious, like, because you've been writing thrillers for more than 15 years, 20 years. Does it still have the same like excitement when you finish that first draft?
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't think anything much has changed for me. There's the panic of the first page, thinking I'm never going to be able to do this. It's impossible. To it's more like relief when you get that first draft done. And then you read through it and then you're wondering, is it any good? So when I'm one of those people that's always really negative about stuff I do. So every time I finish a first draft, I think, oh my God, that sucked. And then I read through it and think, no, 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 it's okay. It's okay.
Well, that's very encouraging to me as a baby writer and a lot of other people out there. Kyle, this has been a delightful conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you, your work, and Fade In?
So Kyle Mills, author on the socials. So that'd be like X, Facebook, and Instagram. I've not delved into TikTok yet. Or kylemills.com. You can go to my website and sign up for my newsletter or just peruse the books and some of the reasons I wrote them and some plots and samples.
Awesome. Well, we'll link all of that in the show notes. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.